In the notorious Five Points neighborhood of 1850s New York, an unimaginable 7,000 souls were packed into a single city block, each person surviving on just 15 square feet of space. To put that in perspective, even modern prison cells offer inmates 4 times that area. But unlike incarceration, Five Points provided no guaranteed meals, no clean water, and certainly no protection from the killers lurking in its unlit passageways. If these grim tales help you unwind, strange as that may seem, feel free to hit like or subscribe. Also, I'm curious, where's everyone watching from? Drop your city and current time in the comments. From last video's comments, I spotted viewers from Miami, Manchester, and Melbourne all chiming in. The internet truly makes for strange connections, doesn't it? Tonight we're journeying back to 1850's Five Points, but first, get comfortable. I mean it. Fluff those pillows. Grab your coziest blanket. This story deserves your full attention. The assault on your senses begins before you even open your eyes. That unmistakable 5 Points stench hits like a physical blow. It's a nauseating cocktail of human waste, rotting food, unwashed bodies, and something worse, something dead. Probably a rat decomposing in the wall right beside where you're trying to sleep. And speaking of those paper-thin walls, you can hear everything. The crying baby on the other side. The couple screaming obscenities beyond that. Someone further away coughing up what sounds like chunks of their own lungs. Welcome to your rude awakening in 1853 Five Points, New York, the most infamous slum in American history. That skittering sound you hear? That's not your imagination. Cockroaches the size of your thumb are scrambling across floorboards inches from your face. Your bed consists of damp straw covered with a scrap of burlap, likely stolen from the docks by some desperate soul. And that dampness? Definitely not water. Some things are better left unexamined. Unlike your plush mattress back home, this one comes with unwanted roommates. Lice and bedbugs that been feasting on you all night, leaving constellations of angry red bites that itch like fire. Get up, someone growls, kicking your feet. My spot now. That's how things work here. You own nothing, not even the space you sleep in. This tenement room, a generous term for what's essentially a 10 by 12-foot closet, operates in shifts. Night workers are returning, which means day workers, that's you now, need to clear out. You sit up and take stock. 15 people crammed into a space that would be tight for 4. Men, women, children all piled together like cordwood. Some are related. Most are strangers. 3 generations sharing the same fetid air. The same floorboards sticky with substances you'd rather not identify. Your mind screams in protest. This isn't survivable. Humans weren't meant to live like this. Spoiler alert, they did. By the thousands. You knew? Asks a woman whose weathered face could place her anywhere between 30 and 60. Her Irish accent marks her as part of the desperate wave that fled the potato famine only to exchange one nightmare for another. The pump's already got a line, she says, nodding toward the door. Better hurry if you want water today. Wait, did she say the pump? As in, one water source for hundreds of people? How many people live in this building? You ask, trying to orient yourself. She cackles, revealing gaps where teeth should be. Building? You mean the whole block? Thousands, love. This building alone? Maybe 200. But who's counting? You move toward what passes for a window, a small opening covered with oiled paper instead of glass, admitting a weak grayish light that does nothing to dispel the gloom. Tearing a small peephole, you peer out into what should be a street, but is actually more like a narrow canyon between leaning tenements that block out the sky. At the bottom flows a river of filth, yesterday's chamber pots, food waste, and God knows what else. Your stomach revolts. Unlike your comfortable morning routine back home, there's no private bathroom here. Just a communal outhouse in the back courtyard if you're lucky. Many simply use chamber pots and toss the contents out the window with barely a glance below. If you're looking for breakfast, the woman continues. Maggie on the second floor sells stale bread. Only half moldy today if we're lucky. As you pick your way across the room, careful not to step on sleeping bodies. Your foot connects with something solid, a bottle. The room is littered with them. Cheap liquor is one of the few reliable comforts in 5 Points. Can you blame them? When reality looks like this, numbness becomes a survival strategy. The hallway outside is darker still, the walls slick with something that makes you recoil. The smell intensifies here, concentrated and inescapable. You instinctively reach for the wall to steady yourself and immediately regret it as your palm meets something soft and fuzzy. Mold grows in patches like some alien ecosystem. Hurry up, someone hisses behind you, shoving past. I gotta get to the sweatshop by 6 or they'll dock my pay. Following this shadow, you navigate a staircase that creaks ominously with each step. The center of each tread is worn concave by decades of desperate feet. The entire building seems alive, groaning and shifting as people move through its decayed arteries. The noise builds as you descend, hundreds of voices creating a chaotic symphony. 5 Points is waking up. Outside, the narrow street is already teeming. Peddlers shout their wares. Children dart between legs. Women balance impossible loads on their heads. Men huddle in groups planning the day's hustle. And there it is, the water pump. One cast iron spigot for hundreds, with a line stretching down the block. Some have been waiting since before dawn. A fight breaks out as someone tries to cut in line. Nobody intervenes. This is just another morning in 5 Points. First time, asks a boy who might be 10 but has eyes decades older. His accent marks him as Italian, part of the newest group to call this hellscape home. Before the Irish, it was Germans and Dutch. After the Irish will come Italians and Chinese. 5 Points has always been where America stashes its newest arrivals. The trick, he demonstrates, cupping his hands just right, is not to lose a drop. Some days they shut it off by noon. This casual comment hits like a brick. Water, that thing you take for granted with every tap turn, is precious and finite here. No faucets in apartments. No refrigerated pitchers. Just this single public pump dispensing liquid that probably carries as many diseases as it prevents. What about food? You ask, suddenly aware of your hollow stomach. The boy grins, surprisingly white teeth flashing, and says, "Follow me. I know where the bakery tosses day-olds." As you trail him, you notice how he moves, fluid and alert like a small predator. Survival here requires a different kind of intelligence. 5 Points children don't get childhoods. They get apprenticeships in staying alive. Turning a corner, you enter what must be the main thoroughfare, the infamous intersection where 5 streets meet, creating the star-shaped crossroads that gave this neighborhood its name. After the dim tenement, the sudden explosion of activity, color, and noise is overwhelming. Bread, fresh bread, calls a woman, though the loaves look anything but fresh. Fish, caught from the harbor, shouts another, selling what appear to be fish heads and tails. The scraps left after the good parts went to wealthy uptown homes. Stay close, your guide warns. Cut purses everywhere. He's not exaggerating. You spot 3 pickpocket attempts in as many minutes. 5 Points operates on its own economy. Part legitimate trade, mostly exploitation and theft. Everyone's trying to get something from someone else because resources are desperately scarce. A commotion erupts ahead, police conducting a raid, dragging people from a basement gin shop. These aren't the polished officers of your time. These cops are as brutal as the neighborhood they patrol, cracking heads first and asking questions never. "Paddy wagon," your guide mutters. "Best stay back." The police load their struggling captives into a wagon bound for the Tombs, the city prison that looms over 5 Points like a physical manifestation of threat. One day breaking the law, the next locked away. The cycle is as predictable as it is inescapable. That's Bandit's Roost, the boy says, pointing to a particularly ominous alley. Don't go there. Ever. You peer down the narrow passage barely wide enough for 2 people. Men in bowler hats loiter at the entrance, sizing up passers-by with predatory calculation. The alley seems to funnel into darkness, leading to who knows what criminal enterprises. What happens there? You ask, though you can guess. People go in. Sometimes they don't come out. He shrugs as if discussing the weather. That's 5 Points. Death here isn't an event. It's ambient background noise. People disappear daily to disease, violence, addiction, incarceration. No one has the luxury of mourning. The casual way the boy mentions potential murder is perhaps the most disturbing part. In 5 points, violence isn't shocking. It's as ordinary as the weather. People vanish daily to disease, back alley stabbings, opium overdoses, or simply being in the wrong place when the police round up undesirables. Nobody has time for proper mourning when survival demands all your attention. "You working or begging today?" growls a scar-faced man leaning against a lamppost. One milky eye stares blindly while the other sizes you up. "'Cause if you're begging, this corner's taken. Working, you say automatically, though you've got no clue what work exists in 1850s 5 points. He snorts, clearly not buying it. Germans got the breweries locked up. Irish got construction and police work. Italians got the fruit stands. Colored folks get the worst scraps. So what's left for you? It's a brutally fair question. 5 points runs on ethnic territories, each group carving out economic niches through necessity and sheer stubbornness. Your heritage determines your opportunities, your safe zones, even your life expectancy. "I'm looking," you hedge. "Ain't we all?" He spits a stream of tobacco juice that barely misses your foot. "Try the rag shop on Mulberry. They're always hiring." A pause. "Of course, you'll be dead of consumption in a year. But that's life, innit?" With that cheerful career advice, he turns away, already forgetting you exist. That's 5 points in a nutshell. Everyone's problems are their own damn problems. You sink or swim alone. The streets have transformed in the hours since you woke. Now they're rivers of exhausted humanity flowing toward another day's grind. Men with calloused hands and hollow eyes. Women with babies strapped to their backs while hauling washing or piecework. And children. So many children, none looking like children should. Penny paper. Get your penny paper. A newsboy no older than 8 darts through the crowd waving newspapers. His bare feet navigate the filth-strewn street with practiced ease, dodging horse apples and worse. Fire in the 4th Ward. 3 dead. Read all about it. You follow, figuring a newspaper might offer job leads. When he pauses to make a sale, you notice his ink-stained fingers, nails bitten to the quick. This kid's probably been working since he could walk. "Hey, paper boy," you call. "Where do folks find work around here?" He sizes you up with eyes decades too old for his face. "Depends what you can do." "Nothing." Then you're hauling at the docks. "Got skills?" "Find your people." Irish stick with Irish, Germans with Germans. Italians cluster that way. Chinese keep to themselves. "What about the factories?" "Brooks Brothers got a clothing factory on Cherry Street. Pays shit, but it's indoors. Better than docks come winter." He shrugs, already losing interest. "Penny paper." You pat empty pockets. The boy vanishes into the crowd. No time wasted on non-paying customers. A police whistle shrieks nearby, followed by shouts. The crowd parts as 2 officers drag a struggling man toward a paddy wagon. His crime? Could be theft, public drunkenness, or just having the wrong skin color in the wrong place. "Oh, they finally caught Twisted Jack," says an apple seller. Her neighbor counters, "That ain't Jack. Jack's taller. That's just some poor bastard who couldn't run fast enough." They debate the arrest's merits while the man screams fade beneath wagon wheels on cobblestone. Justice in 5 points is swift, brutal, and often misdirected. Morning sun struggles through the narrow streets, casting strange shadows between buildings. Despite the early hour, coal smoke from factories and cooking fires already thickens the air, making each breath a conscious effort. Mulberry Street looks like a canyon of despair, buildings leaning so far they nearly kiss, laundry dripping on passers-by below. The stench intensifies here. Unwashed bodies, rotting food, human waste, and something chemical that burns your nostrils. Then you see it, the rag shop. From outside, it looks almost respectable. Inside is another story. The door creaks open to reveal a scene from a nightmare. Dozens of people, mostly women and children, hunch over mountains of rags, sorting through what looks like garbage. Torn clothing, discarded linens, fabric scraps in various stages of decay. The air swims with fibers and dust, visible in the few light shafts penetrating grimy windows. Everyone's coughing, a constant symphony of hacks, wheezes, and wet, rattling breaths. This is tuberculosis central, You can practically see the bacteria floating in the air. You looking for work or buying? Rumbles a mountain of a man blocking further entry. His German accent and scarred knuckles suggest he didn't get this job through charm. Work, you say, immediately regretting it as the full horror sinks in. Sorting or picking? Sorters stay here 10 hours, 6 days, $2 a week. Pickers go out, find rags, bring him back, paid by weight. $2 a week. Even in 1850s money, that's barely survival wages. But looking around, you realize this might be as good as it gets for many here. I'll pick, you decide, preferring the streets to this consumptive hellhole. He hands you a burlap sack with a strap. Bring back clean ones only. No blood, no dead rats. We find that shit, we dock your pay. Back by sunset or don't come back at all. Just like that, you're employed as a rag picker in 5 points, the absolute bottom rung of a very tall, very slippery ladder. Outside, you gulp relatively fresher air, wondering where to begin. Other rag pickers scatter to their territories, knowing the best spots through years of grim experience. First time, a woman sidles up, her sack already half full though the day's barely started. Her Irish accent marks her as famine stock like so many here. You got that new look, like you still expect things to make sense. That obvious? Follow me if you want. I know where the rich folks dump their linens. You fall and step beside Mary as she introduces herself, grateful for any guidance in this alien world. She moves with purpose through 5 Points Labyrinth, taking shortcuts through alleys so narrow you turn sideways to pass. Been here 3 years, she offers. Came over when the potatoes went black and half my village starved. The famine, you say, remembering history books. Wasn't no famine, she spits, voice hardening. Was murder. Plenty of food in Ireland. English just shipped it all out while we died. Called it God's will, they did. The bitterness in her voice could etch steel. This isn't distant history to her. It's a still bleeding wound. Ireland's trauma clings to her like the stench of these streets. My man died on the crossing, she continues. Ship fever. They wrapped him in canvas and dropped him in the Atlantic. Not even a proper Catholic burial. I'm sorry, you offer inadequately. Sorry don't fill bellies. She stops suddenly where the neighborhood shifts slightly. The buildings stand straighter, the streets marginally cleaner. This here's the border. Past this, the better sort live. Not rich, but tradesfolk. They throw out better rags. Mary leads you behind shops where trash piles await. She attacks the first pile with practiced efficiency, plucking anything fabric and stuffing her sack. Don't just stand there, she hisses. This spot won't stay empty long. You dig in, trying not to think what else might be in these piles. A discarded shirt with torn sleeves. A stained tablecloth. A child's dress missing buttons. Each goes into your gradually filling sack. Watch for rats, Mary warns. They don't like being disturbed. On cue, something large and furry shoots from the pile, brushing your leg. You yelp, making Mary laugh. 5 Points rats are like cats elsewhere. And the cats are like small dogs. And the dogs, she shudders. Best not meet the dogs in the dark. As you work, Mary explains the rag economy. Your finds will be sorted, then sold to paper mills to become pulp or rewoven into cheap, shoddy fabric. Nothing's wasted here, not when survival depends on squeezing value from every scrap. By midday, your sack's half full and your back screams in protest. Mary straightens, stretching. Dinner, she announces. Can't work on empty. You follow her to a street vendor selling beef stew for 2 cents a bowl. The floating meat could be anything. Horse, rat, dog. But it's hot, and your body screams for fuel. Mary pays for both of you, waving off thanks. You'll do the same when you can. That's how we survive here. The stew sits heavy as you continue your rag-picking education. Mary points out landmarks. That there's a brothel. That's an opium den, Chinese run it, but everyone goes. Lots of rags there. Drunks and hopheads lose their clothes regular. You pass a factory with windows open against the heat. The sound that pours out deafens. Hundreds of sewing machines running at once, punctuated by floor managers' shouts. Through the windows, rows of hunched figures, mostly women, work at a frantic pace. Brooks Brothers, Mary explains. Making uniforms for rich boys to play soldier in. 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. What do they make? $4 a week if they're lucky. Half that for the children. Children. She gives you a look. Of course, children. Tiny fingers, good for detail work. They start at 6, 7 years old. Better than chimney sweeping. That kills them faster. As if summoned, sooty-faced boys trudge past carrying chimney sweep tools. None look older than 10, all with the hollow-cheeked, sunken-eyed look of chronic malnutrition. One coughs continuously, the telltale hack of chimney sweeps cancer, a death sentence. At least they work. Mary nods toward the boys. Better than the gangsters. On cue, tough-looking teenagers swagger past wearing identical red neckerchiefs. Gang colors in 1850s New York. Dead rabbits, Mary whispers. Irish gang. They protect our streets from the Bowery boys and plug uglies. Of course, they also shake down shopkeepers for protection money. The boys, they are just boys, despite their hard faces. Carry an arsenal of crude weapons, clubs, knives, brass knuckles. Their eyes constantly scan for threats or opportunities. They don't bother us ragpickers, Mary assures you. We're too poor to rob, but don't make eye contact all the same. You keep your gaze down until they pass, their dangerous energy lingering like static. The afternoon wears on, your sack growing heavier with each salvaged scrap of fabric. Your hands turn raw from digging through refuse, your back protesting every movement. Yet Mary shows no signs of slowing. We need full sacks, she explains, adjusting the strap cutting into her shoulder. Half full won't pay enough for dinner and lodging. You pass a construction site where Irish laborers scramble up rickety scaffolding without harnesses, balancing on narrow beams 5 stories above cobblestones. Despite the obvious danger, a line of hopefuls waits for any opening. My cousin fell last year, Mary says, following your gaze. Broke his back. No work, no money, no doctor. Died a month later, leaving 5 little ones behind. His widow takes in laundry now, when her hands ain't too raw to work. The casual way she relates this tragedy speaks volumes about 5 Point's relationship with death. It's not an anomaly. It's a neighbor, a constant companion, an expected visitor. As afternoon bleeds into evening, you trudge back toward the rag shop, sacks bulging. The streets hum with different energy now. Workers returning from factories, children playing in gutters, what few can afford to play, vendors hawking evening meals. The tenements glow with cooking fires and candlelight, hundreds of lives stacked atop one another like precarious card houses. What happens after we sell these? You ask, shifting your heavy load. Mary considers. If we get enough coin, lodging house for a proper bed. If not, the mission might have space. A pause. Unless you got family here, someone's floor to sleep on. The question highlights another brutal 5 Points reality. Without connections, without community, survival becomes exponentially harder. Those without family or ethnic ties often face the worst fates. No family, you admit. Stick with me then, she offers. Safety in numbers, especially after dark. The sun dips behind tenements, casting long shadows that make the streets more dangerous by the minute. Gas lamps flicker to life, creating islands of weak light in a sea of gathering darkness. You pass a saloon where piano music spills into the street alongside drunken laughter. From another building comes sounds of fighting, shouts, breaking glass, a woman's scream. No one intervenes. This is just evening ambience in 5 Points. That's Bottle Alley. Mary points to a particularly blackened passage between buildings. Don't go there night or day. Come to think of it, just don't go there. The rag shop bustles when you arrive. Other pickers lined up to sell their day's finds. The German manager weighs each sack, making arbitrary deductions for unsuitable rags. Arguments flare up, quickly extinguished by the threat of withheld payment. Your sack yields 37 cents, a pittance, but more than you expected. Mary does slightly better at 42. Not bad for your first day, she says as you exit into now full darkness. Most don't find the good spots their first time out. Thanks to you. We help our own, she says simply. Irish look after Irish, Italians after Italians, Chinese after Chinese. Only way to survive. That's the unspoken system. Mutual aid within ethnic enclaves, suspicion or hostility between them. Not prejudice so much as desperate pragmatism. When resources are this scarce, caring for outsiders feels impossible. Mary leads you to a dingy food stall selling what passes for dinner. A stew similar to lunches, but with more mysterious meat floating in grease. 2 bowls and hard bread cost 15 cents, leaving you 22 for lodging. As you eat standing at a crowded counter, Mary points out local characters. That's old Tom. She nods toward a man with an impressive beard. Best pickpocket in the points. They say he could lift your teeth mid-conversation and you wouldn't notice till you tried to eat. And her. You indicate a well-dressed woman who seems out of place. Mission lady. Comes down from uptown to save our souls. Mary's tone makes clear her opinion of such efforts. Wants us sober and grateful, but don't much care if we're housed or fed. The woman distributes religious tracts to disinterested passers-by. A few children trailing her hoping for treats, sometimes offered with salvation pitches. And them. You point to rough-looking men gathered at the corner. Mary's voice drops. 5 pointers. Worst gang in the city. They control everything. Protection rackets, gambling, girls. Cross them and you disappear. As if sensing your attention, one man glances your way. You quickly look down, heart racing. Even without understanding local power dynamics, you recognize predators when you see them. Finish up, Mary urges. We need lodging before the good spots fill. The good spots turn out to be relative. Mary leads you to a Baxter Street lodging house, a 5-story tenement with rooms subdivided into impossibly small sleeping spaces. For 20 cents each, you get floor space in a room with 14 others. A luxury compared to those who sleep in shifts or on streets. Home sweet home, Mary says with grim humor as you enter the fetid room. Find a spot and hold it. Sleep with valuables under your head or they'll vanish by morning. You claim a patch of bare floor, using your coat, acquired somehow in this historical nightmare, as both mattress and pillow. Around you, 5 Point's nocturnal soundtrack filters through thin walls. Arguments, laughter, crying babies, drunken singing, occasional screams. First day's the worst, Mary says, curling up nearby. After a while, you stop noticing how bad it is. That's when you know 5 Points has got you for good. As you lie there, body aching from unaccustomed labor, you wonder how people endured this reality not as historical tourism, but as actual life. What kept them going in conditions that seem unsurvivable? The answer perhaps lies in Mary's matter-of-fact resilience. 5 Points residents survived because the alternative was death, and humans will endure almost anything to live one more day. They created community where none should exist. They found joy in a landscape of suffering. They persisted. Tomorrow will bring more rag-picking, more struggle for pennies and survival. But for tonight, in this crowded room of strangers bound by shared poverty, there's a strange peace. Not comfort, never that, but the collective exhale of people who've survived another day in America's most notorious slum. Outside, 5 Points continues its nocturnal transformation, becoming more dangerous as darkness provides cover for its worst elements. But that's tomorrow's problem. For now, exhaustion pulls you toward unconsciousness. Your first workday in 5 Points complete. You've survived. Here, that counts as victory. Morning comes with a new sound, coughing. Not the occasional hack of a chimney sweep or the throat clearing of a smoker, but a symphony of respiratory distress echoing through the tenement. It starts on the floor below, a deep, rattling cough that sounds like it's tearing someone apart from the inside. Then another joins in from the next room. And another. Mary sits up abruptly, her face tight. That's cholera for sure. The word hangs in the air like a death sentence. Unlike your world of antibiotics and clean water, cholera in 1850s 5 Points means digging graves faster than coffins can be built. Knew something was wrong yesterday, she mutters, gathering her few belongings. Too many folks missing from Mulberry's. And Mrs. Donovan wasn't at the pump. She's there every morning, rain or shine. You hadn't noticed, not yet attuned to the neighborhood's rhythms. But now that Mary mentions it, There'd been a strange tension beneath yesterday's revelry, a forced cheer, like people were trying to ignore the shadow creeping through the streets. What do? You ask, already dreading the answer. Mary's face hardens. We work. We eat if we're lucky. We stay away from the sick if we can. And we pray it passes us by. The brutal pragmatism of 5 points hits again. No sick days. No quarantine protocols. No safety nets. The choice is simple. Work despite the epidemic or starve because of it. Outside, the neighborhood feels different. People move faster, avoid eye contact, keep their distance when possible, which isn't often, given the crowding. A miasma of fear hangs over the already filthy streets. Don't drink the water, Mary warns, though you hardly need the reminder. Not that you should anyway, but especially not now. Beer and whiskey only. The alcohol kills the bad humors. Her folk medicine isn't entirely wrong. Alcohol might actually be safer than the contaminated water, but it's hardly a solution for children, pregnant women, or those who can't afford it. At the corner of Mulberry and Bayard, a crowd gathers around a man in a dark suit reading from an official-looking document. By order of the Metropolitan Board of Health, all residents of the affected buildings must vacate immediately for fumigation. Bloody hell, mutters a man beside you. They're clearing out the Bend. Mulberry Bend, the most notorious section of an already notorious neighborhood. A curved street lined with the worst tenements, the most overcrowded buildings, the highest disease rates. If cholera has taken root there, it'll sweep through 5 points like wildfire. They never do this for just one case, Mary whispers. Must be dozens already. A woman pushes forward, her face twisted with rage. Where are we supposed to go? She demands. You're putting us out with nowhere. The health official barely glances at her. That's not the department's concern. You may return when the buildings are declared safe. And when will that be? Another voice shouts. When they're safe, he repeats, already turning away. The crowd's mood darkens dangerously. These are people with nowhere to go, being forced from even their squalid homes with no alternatives offered. The health official senses the shift and signals to nearby policemen, who step forward, hands on their batons. Don't get involved, Mary warns, pulling you back. That's how folks end up in the tombs. As if to prove her point, a shouting match erupts into violence. A man lunges at the official, is intercepted by police, and goes down under a flurry of baton strikes. Women scream. Children cry. 5 points justice, swift and merciless. Come on, Mary tugs harder. Rag shop will be open despite everything. Cholera don't stop commerce. She's right. When you reach the shop, it's business as usual. The German manager hands out sacks without comment on the epidemic raging blocks away. Profit margins are too thin, competition too fierce, to close for something as common as disease. Uptown today, Mary decides. Better pickings, and further from the sickness. You follow her north, away from 5 points proper, into marginally better neighborhoods. The buildings here are still tenements, but less visibly crumbling. The streets, while not clean by modern standards, have fewer piles of rotting waste. The real difference is the people, fewer of them, and less desperate looking. Don't stare, Mary advises. Act like you belong, or shopkeepers will call the cops. You try to mimic her purposeful stride, though everything about this slightly more prosperous area fascinates you. The social gradient is visible block by block. The further from 5 points, the better the conditions. My cousin died in the cholera outbreak of '49, Mary says suddenly as you pick through a promising trash heap. 3 days from first symptoms to death. Healthy as a horse until then, 22 years old. The casual mention of such personal tragedy speaks volumes about life expectancy in 5 points. Death isn't unexpected. It's routine, especially from disease. What causes it? You ask, though you already know the answer from history books. Mary shrugs. Bad air, they say. Miasmas. That's why they're fumigating the buildings. She's not wrong. Germ theory is still in its infancy in the 1850s. Most people, even doctors, believe disease spreads through foul air rather than contaminated water or person-to-person contact. As you work, you notice other signs of the outbreaks toll. A house with a black crepe ribbon on the door, someone already dead inside. A doctor's carriage outside a slightly better tenement. Horses stamping impatiently while their owner tends to those who can pay. The absence of children playing in the streets, kept inside in a futile attempt at protection. Heard the alderman's daughter died yesterday, says a fellow ragpicker who joins your scavenging. Uptown girl who came to do charity work at the mission. 20 years old. Mary predicts grimly. That'll change things. Poor folk dying is expected. Rich folk dying gets attention. She's right again. 5 Points disease outbreaks only become civic emergencies when they threaten to spread beyond the slum's boundaries. The lives of its residents are considered expendable. The lives of the wealthy are not. By midday, you've heard a dozen cholera stories, each more horrific than the last. The woman who went from healthy to dead in 18 hours. The family of 6 found blue-black with disease, stacked in their hallway until the death wagon came. Stop listening, Mary advises, seeing your growing horror. Nothing you can do except keep living. But ignoring the epidemic becomes impossible when you turn a corner and come face to face with its consequences. A death cart loaded high with bodies. Men in protective cloths wrapping yet another victim. A small child, while the mother wails inconsolably nearby. The corpse wagon attendants wear vinegar-soaked cloths over their faces, a useless defense against what they don't yet understand is waterborne bacteria. Jesus, you whisper, the scene searing itself into your memory. This isn't a history book illustration. It's happening right in front of you. The brutal reality of pre-modern disease. Keep moving, Mary says, but her voice lacks conviction. Even she, hardened by years and 5 Points, finds this scene hard to witness. The afternoon brings more grim evidence of cholera's grip. Buildings marked with quarantine signs. Sidewalks sprinkled with lime in a misguided attempt to purify the air. People carrying bundles of possessions, evicted from fumigated tenements with nowhere to go. We should check on Patty, Mary suggests, clearly worried about your friend from yesterday. His building's right in the worst of it. You detour back toward 5 Points proper, your sack only half full, but concern for Patty overriding the need for more rags. The streets feel eerie in their quietness. Many businesses are closed, windows shuttered. Patty's building stands at the curve of Mulberry Bend, a 5-story structure leaning precariously like it's too exhausted to stand straight. Even from outside, you can hear coughing from multiple rooms. Patty Mulligan. Mary calls up toward his window. You alive in there? A pale face appears on the 3rd floor. Mary? That you? His voice sounds weaker than yesterday. Half the building's down with it. Finnegan died this morning. Old Mrs. Cohen, too. Mary's face tightens. You got symptoms? A pause. Just a little stomach trouble. Nothing serious. The lie hangs in the air. Stomach trouble is how cholera begins. Severe diarrhea leading to fatal dehydration, often within hours. I'll bring you water, Mary offers, then catches herself. No, not water. Whiskey. Clean the gut better. Don't come in, Patty warns. Not safe. I'll manage. Another lie. Without help, without clean water, without medical care, Patty's chances are slim. But what can you do? 5 Points offers no good options, only degrees of terrible. We'll check tomorrow, Mary promises, her voice falsely bright. Rest up. She turns away, her face crumpling once Patty can't see her. He's not going to make it, she whispers. That's the cholera look already. Sunken eyes, hollow voice. You want to argue, to offer hope, but what's the point? She knows 5 Points better than you ever will. She's seen this play out before. As you walk away, the building itself seems to groan, a chorus of suffering from within its rotting walls. The rain comes as an unexpected mercy, a steady downpour that washes some of the filth from 5 Points cobblestones. The air smells almost clean for the first time since you arrived in this historical nightmare. Rain's good, Mary observes, standing under a dripping awning. Clears the miasmas. Might help with the cholera. Her folk wisdom isn't entirely wrong. The downpour will temporarily cleanse the streets, even if it can't touch the contaminated water sources spreading disease. The church has provided a meager breakfast, watery porridge and stale bread, but more than many will eat today. You take your portion gratefully, noticing how other displaced residents do the same. No complaints, no demands for better, just quiet gratitude for anything at all. Bellevue first, Mary decides, scraping her bowl clean. Then work if there's time. The hospital looms by the East River, a considerable walk from 5 Points. The rain continues as you make your way through streets that grow marginally better with each block. By the time you reach Bellevue, you're soaked but cleaner than you've been in days. Bellevue Hospital in the 1850s resembles a prison more than a place of healing. Its grim stone facade promises little comfort to those inside. Never been in a hospital before, Mary admits, hesitating at the entrance. Never could afford it. For most 5 Points residents, hospitals are places to die, not recover. Home remedies and sheer endurance are the usual approaches. Inside, chaos reigns. Patients line the hallways on makeshift pallets, many clearly suffering cholera's brutal symptoms. Harried nurses move between them, offering water and little else. The smell hits like a physical blow, bodily fluids, disinfectant, and a sweet-sour stench of disease. Looking for Patty Mulligan, Mary tells an exhausted attendant. Brought in yesterday from Mulberry Bend. The man barely glances up from his ledger. Ward, see if he's still alive. The casual cruelty of the statement makes Mary flinch, but she pushes forward through corridors filled with suffering and death. 5 Points residents removed from familiar squalor only to die in institutional misery. Ward C is a long room with beds lining both walls, most occupied by men in various stages of cholera. The smell is worse here. The sounds, moaning, retching, praying, form a symphony of human anguish. And there, halfway down, a familiar face. Patty, terribly changed but still breathing. His robust frame seems to have collapsed in on itself, cheeks hollowed by dehydration, skin taking on the bluish tinge of severe cholera. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, Mary whispers, crossing herself before approaching. Patty, it's Mary O'Sullivan. Come to see you off, have you? His eyes flutter open, struggling to focus. Recognition dawns slowly, then the ghost of his usual grin. Mary, he croaks, voice barely audible. Come to see me off, have you? Don't talk foolishness, she scolds, though her voice breaks. You'll be dancing at Paradise Square again by Sunday. Even in his dire state, Patty manages a weak laugh that dissolves into coughing. Aye, and I'll be crowned king of England too. You got symptoms? Mary asks, though the answer is obvious. Just a little stomach trouble. Nothing serious. The lie hangs between you all. Stomach trouble is how cholera begins. Severe diarrhea leading to fatal dehydration within hours. I'll bring you water, Mary offers, then catches herself. No, not water. Whiskey. Clean the gut better. Don't come in, Patty warns. Not safe. I'll manage. Another lie. Without help, without clean water, without medical care, Patty's chances are slim. The nurse helps Patty take a swig from Mary's flask without comment. In a hospital overwhelmed by epidemic, small comforts like whiskey are the least of concerns. What are they giving you? Mary asks, looking around for any sign of medical treatment. Water with salt, Patty grimaces. Something to make me piss more, like I needed help with that. Doctor came by once, said I was a textbook case. The treatment sounds barbaric to modern ears, but it's actually not far from current cholera protocols, replacing fluids and electrolytes. The problem is 1850s medicine doesn't understand dosages or sterile technique, making their treatments as likely to kill as cure. The sisters come by. Patty continues weakly. Pray over us. Offer last rites when it's time. Extreme unction, the final sacrament for the dying. Mary crosses herself again. Not for you yet. The devil's not ready for Patty Mulligan. He insists with a flash of old spirit. Too much competition. You can't help but admire his determination to joke in the face of death. This gallows humor runs through 5 Points like a backbone, stiffening resolve when everything else fails. Anyone been to see you? Mary asks, adjusting his sweat-soaked pillow. Sullivan Brothers came yesterday, Patty says. Brought cards, played a few hands. His cracked lips twist in a smile. I won 3 cents. Think they'll let me keep it. The simple kindness of this gesture. Men taking time from their own struggles to visit a sick friend, deliberately losing at cards to give him a final victory. Catches in your throat. 5 Points may be America's most notorious slum, but its residents still find ways to honor their humanity. And Kate? Mary asks carefully. Patty's face clouds. Hasn't come. Probably doesn't know. A pause. If I don't make it, tell her I asked for her. It's clear from Mary's expression there is no Kate. At least not anymore. Another 5 Points reality. Relationships as fragile as everything else, broken by disease, distance, or desperation. I'll tell her. Mary promises the lie. An act of mercy. A commotion erupts at the ward's end. A patient convulsing in cholera's final stages. Nurses rush to hold him down. Patty watches with the detached interest of someone who may soon share that fate. You should go, he says, turning back to Mary. Not safe here, and I'm tired. We'll come tomorrow, Mary promises, though all three of you know it's likely a promise she won't need to keep. Patty fumbles for her hand, gripping with surprising strength. You're a good girl, Mary O'Sullivan. Too good for the points. And you're a terrible liar, Patty Mulligan, she responds, but leans down to kiss his forehead all the same. Outside the hospital, Mary walks in silence for blocks, rain mingling with tears she won't acknowledge. Finally, she stops, taking a deep breath. He'll not last the night, she says flatly. I've seen enough cholera to know. I'm sorry, you offer inadequately. Sorry don't help, she replies, echoing earlier sentiment. Then, softer, but thank you all the same. This is grief in 5 points, abbreviated, pragmatic, without the luxury of extended mourning. There are too many losses, too close together, and survival demands attention to the living. No rag picking today, Mary decides, looking at the still falling rain. Stuff will be too wet to be worth anything. Let's try the mission instead. Might be extra work with so many sick. The 5 Points mission occupies a former brewery. Its conversion from alcohol production to religious salvation, a metaphor too obvious to ignore. Despite Mary's general skepticism toward do-gooders, the mission provides essential services, food, occasional shelter, sometimes paid work for neighborhood women. Mrs. O'Sullivan greets the superintendent, a stern-faced woman with surprisingly kind eyes. We wondered if you'd come today. We're short-handed with the epidemic. Ready to work, ma'am, Mary responds, slipping into the deference expected by charity providers. My cousin too. The superintendent eyes you dubiously, but nods. Laundry needs doing. 3 cents an hour, paid at day's end. It's less than rag picking on a good day, but guaranteed money regardless of weather. You follow Mary to the mission's washroom, a steam-filled chamber dominated by massive tubs and washboards. Ladies, Mary nods to the half-dozen women already at work, their hands red and raw from lye soap and hot water. They nod back, a few offering tired smiles. The work is punishing, hauling heavy wet linens, scrubbing stubborn stains, wringing water from sheets that feel like they weigh a ton. The lye burns your skin. The steam makes breathing difficult. Your back screams with each movement. Yet there's something almost comforting about the communal labor, the rhythm of work shared among women who understand each other's struggles. My Giovanni has the fever, confides an Italian woman beside you, her English heavily accented but clear. 3 days now. I pray to Santa Maria with each scrub. My aunt had it last year. Offers an Irish woman across the tub. We gave her mustard water and prayed to Saint Roch. She lived. Saint Roch? Asks the Italian woman. Patron saint of plague victims, explains the Irish woman. Very powerful against fever. The exchange of folk remedies and protective saints continues as you work. Practical advice mingled with spiritual comfort passed between women of different backgrounds, united by common threats. Each has a story of survival or loss, a remedy tried, a prayer offered. My mother said onions in the sick room draw out the poison, offers a German woman, wringing a sheet with practiced efficiency. Put one under the bed. It turns black when it absorbs the disease. Hot mustard plaster on the belly, counters a black woman, her arms muscled from years of similar labor. Draws out the cold that causes the purging. None of these remedies would impress modern medicine, but they represent something vital: agency in the face of overwhelming powerlessness. When doctors are scarce or ineffective, when hospitals are feared death houses, these traditional practices provide both practical action and psychological comfort. "My neighbor lost 3 children in 3 days," says a quiet voice, stopping the conversation cold. Nothing helped. Nothing. The shared reality of 5 points reasserts itself. Sometimes nothing works. Sometimes everyone dies. Sometimes all the prayers and poultices and protective rituals in the world can't save those you love. The women work in silence for a while, each lost in private thoughts or memories. Then someone begins to hum softly, an Irish lament you don't recognize. Another voice joins. Then another. Different melodies from different traditions somehow weaving together into something new and strangely beautiful. This, too, is 5 points. Cultural hybridization born of proximity and shared hardship. In crowded tenements and workshops, traditions blend and transform, creating something uniquely American from fragments of old-world heritage. By midday, your hands are blistered and your back feels permanently bent, but the pile of clean laundry has grown impressively. The mission superintendent appears, looking pleased. "Good work, ladies." Dinner is served in the hall for workers. The simple meal, bean soup and brown bread, tastes like a feast after hours of hard labor. You eat at long tables alongside mission workers, other charity cases, and a few neighborhood residents seeking temporary refuge from the epidemic. "That's Reverend Pease," Mary whispers, nodding toward a distinguished-looking man moving between tables. "Runs the mission better than most of his kind. Actually lives here in the points instead of just visiting to feel good about himself." The Reverend stops at your table, smiling warmly. "Mrs. O'Sullivan, good to see you. How goes the laundry?" "Nearly done, sir. Sheets for the hospital." "Yes, Bellevue needs all we can provide." His face clouds. "The epidemic is particularly virulent this time." "My friend's there," Mary says. "Patty Mulligan. Don't suppose you'll visit this evening?" Reverend Pease promises immediately. "Offer what comfort I can." The simple kindness brings tears to Mary's eyes, quickly blinked away. "Thank you, sir." After the Reverend moves on, Mary explains, "He buried my sister's child last winter. Did it proper with a real service and all, even though we couldn't pay. Said every soul deserves dignity, even the poorest." In a neighborhood where death often comes without ceremony, bodies simply collected and disposed of in mass graves, this insistence on individual dignity is revolutionary. Whatever else the mission does or fails to do, this recognition of 5 Points residents' full humanity earns Mary's respect. The afternoon brings a new task: sorting donated clothing for distribution to the needy. The irony isn't lost on you. Yesterday, you were picking rags from trash heaps. Today, you're helping distribute charity to people exactly like yourself. "Take anything you need," whispers an older mission worker when the superintendent isn't looking. "God knows you've earned it." Mary selects a relatively intact shawl to replace her tattered one. You find a pair of socks without holes, a luxury in 5 Points. Small improvements, but meaningful ones. As you work, more neighborhood residents drift into the mission, some seeking food, others shelter, still others simply human connection during frightening times. The main hall becomes a de facto community center, people sharing news and comfort away from tenements where disease lurks. "Heard the health department's closing more buildings on Mulberry," reports a dock worker, his powerful frame diminished by exhaustion. "Where's everyone supposed to go?" "The old brewery's taking extra bodies," offers another man. 3 cents a spot. No questions. The old brewery, once an actual brewery, now the most notorious tenement in 5 Points. Already dangerously overcrowded under normal conditions. During epidemics, it becomes something from Dante's imagination. Humans packed so tightly they sleep in shifts, sharing the same fetid air, the same disease-ridden spaces. "Rather sleep in the street," mutters Mary. "At least there's air." "Rain's stopping," someone notes, looking toward the windows. "Good sign, maybe." The mission gradually empties as evening approaches, residents returning to whatever accommodations they've secured for the night. You and Mary collect your earnings, 36 cents each for 12 hours work, and face the same dilemma as yesterday. Church again, you suggest. Mary shakes her head. Too crowded now. Everyone's got the same idea. She leads you instead to a small, nondescript building a few blocks from the mission. A hand-painted sign identifies it as Mrs. Chen's boarding house. Chinese lady, Mary explains. Runs a clean place. Costs more, but worth it if you've got the coin. The boarding house is indeed cleaner than anywhere else you've seen in 5 Points. The narrow entrance hall smells of unfamiliar spices rather than sewage and rot. A tiny elderly Chinese woman appears from a back room, her face deeply lined but her eyes alert. Mrs. O'Sullivan. She greets Mary in accented but clear English. You need room for two? If you've got it, Mrs. Chun. The old woman studies you both, then nods. 50 cents. Clean bed. No drunks. No fighting. It's expensive by 5 Point standards. Nearly a day's wages for a night's lodging. But Mary pays without hesitation. Cheaper than a funeral, she mutters as she counts out the coins. Mrs. Chun leads you upstairs to a small room with 2 narrow beds. Actual beds with frames and thin mattresses, not just floor space. The luxury is almost shocking after your previous accommodations. Clean sheets, Mrs. Chun says proudly. Wash hands before sleeping. She points to a basin of water in the corner. No visitors, no noise after 9. When she leaves, Mary sighs deeply, sinking onto one of the beds. Worth every penny, she decides, especially during cholera time. She keeps it clean. The boarding house represents another aspect of 5 Points, entrepreneurship born of necessity. Mrs. Chun has carved out a niche providing a service slightly better than the neighborhood standard, charging more but delivering genuine value. In the process, she's created a safe haven not just for herself, but for others willing and able to pay for temporary escape from the worst conditions. As night falls outside, the sounds of 5 Points filter through the thin walls, distant shouts, occasional laughter, the clatter of wheels on cobblestones. But inside this small room, there's peace of a sort, a momentary reprieve from the neighborhood's relentless demands. You know what I think about sometimes? Mary says softly, staring at the ceiling. What it must be like in those big houses uptown. Clean water just by turning a tap. Rooms with only one family in them. Children who go to school instead of factories. The simple luxuries that define middle-class life in 1850s New York. Amenities that even the poorest in your time would take for granted. The gap between 5 Points and the comfortable world just a mile or 2 uptown might as well be an ocean. But then, she continues, those uptown folk, they don't know what we know. They don't understand how to survive when everything's against you. They've never felt what it's like when a stranger shares their last crust because you're both Irish or both Italian or both just hungry. They don't know 5 Points. There's pride in her voice alongside the resentment. Pride in endurance, in the hard-won knowledge of survival against impossible odds. 5 Points residents may envy the wealthy their comforts, but they also recognize their own strength, forged in conditions that would break those same privileged New Yorkers. Try to sleep, Mary suggests, blowing out the candle beside her bed. Tomorrow comes early, same as always. Darkness enfolds the room, deeper and more complete than you've experienced since arriving in 5 Points. No street lamps penetrate the small window. No neighbors' candles cast shadows on the walls. For once, you can almost forget where you are. Almost imagine yourself back in your own bed, in your own time. Outside, 5 Points continues its nocturnal existence. The gambling dens and brothels operating until dawn. The gangs claiming their territories until daylight drives them to cover. The most desperate seeking shelter in doorways and alleys until morning allows more dignified accommodations. But inside this small room with its clean sheets and solid door, sleep approaches like a merciful visitor. Your body, aching from unaccustomed labor, gradually relaxes. Your mind, overwhelmed by the constant sensory assault of 5 Points, begins to quiet. Mary's breathing deepens beside you, becoming the rhythmic pattern of sleep. Despite everything, the poverty, the disease, the constant struggle, she's found enough peace to rest. It's perhaps the most remarkable 5-point survival skill of all, the ability to find moments of tranquility in a place designed to destroy it. As you drift towards sleep yourself, you reflect on what you've witnessed in this historical nightmare. The 5-point slum was real. Its conditions were as horrific as any description could capture. People lived and died in circumstances that modern Americans would consider unsurvivable. They endured disease, starvation, violence, and exploitation that would break most spirits. And yet they survived. Not all of them. Patty didn't, and countless others succumbed to 5 Point's many hazards. But enough persisted to build communities, to create culture, to pass on their resilience to children who would eventually leave the slum for better circumstances. 5 Points was America at its worst, but also paradoxically America at its most determined. Immigrants and outcasts who refused to disappear despite every force aligned against them. Your own bed back home awaits your return. Clean, comfortable, free of bedbugs and cholera, and the constant precarity of 1850s slum life. You'll never again turn a tap without remembering the 5 Points water pump. Never throw away food without thinking of those who scavenged for meals. Never take modern medicine for granted after seeing what cholera did to Patty. The lessons of 5 Points settle over you like a blanket. Not comfortable, but necessary. This was part of America's story, a chapter often glossed over in favor of more triumphant narratives. But understanding 5 Points means understanding something essential about the foundation upon which modern America was built. The exploitation, the suffering, but also the incredible human capacity for adaptation and persistence. Mary murmurs something in her sleep, a word, a name, perhaps a fragment of prayer. Even unconscious, she carries 5 Points with her, its rhythms and demands never fully absent. But for now, she rests, her body gathering strength for tomorrow's challenges. And you too find yourself sliding deeper toward sleep. The hardships of 5 Points gradually fading as consciousness recedes. Your breathing slows, matching Mary's restful rhythm. Your thoughts grow less distinct, more dreamlike. The weight of historical witness lifts, replaced by the lightness that comes before true sleep. In your time, 5 Points no longer exists. Demolished, rebuilt, reimagined as Chinatown, as courthouses, as modern apartment buildings with proper plumbing and ventilation. The people who suffered and survived there are long gone. Their stories mostly forgotten except by historians and descendants who may never know the full truth of what their ancestors endured. But for these few moments, you've walked their streets, breathed their air, witnessed their struggles and small victories. You've seen 5 Points not as a historical abstraction, but as a living community of people who, despite everything, maintain their humanity in conditions designed to strip it away. As sleep finally claims you, 5 Points recedes like an ebbing tide. Its lessons absorbed, but its hardships thankfully left behind. Unlike Mary, unlike Patty, unlike the thousands who had no choice but to wake tomorrow in America's most notorious slum, you can return to comfort, to safety, to the countless luxuries that would seem miraculous to 5 Points residents. Your last conscious thought is gratitude for modern medicine, for clean water, for regulations that prevent such slums from existing in America today. And perhaps also gratitude for this glimpse into a past that, however harsh, helped shape the present you'll return to. 5 Points fades completely now, replaced by the deep, healing peace of sleep. Your breathing slows, your body relaxes fully, and you drift into dreams far removed from tenements and cholera and struggling immigrants in a hostile new land. Morning comes as it eventually did even in 5 Points, offering temporary escape from hardship and renewal for tomorrow's challenges. But unlike those who slept in those crowded tenements, your sleep can be peaceful, secure in the knowledge that morning will bring comforts they could scarcely imagine. Rest now, and carry their memory gently into your dreams. Morning arrives with a gentle knock at the door. Mrs. Chun stands there, her lined face somber. "Message for Mrs. O'Sullivan," she says, handing Mary a folded note. "From Mission, Mary opens it with fingers that tremble slightly. She reads the few lines, then closes her eyes. She doesn't need to say anything. Paddy Mulligan, survivor of dockyard brawls and police beatings, veteran of 1,005 points hardships, has lost his final battle with cholera. The funeral's this afternoon, she says quietly. Reverend Pease arranged it. Proper burial, not the potter's field. This is a significant kindness in 5 points, where most cholera victims end up in mass graves on Hard Island, unmarked and unmourned. A proper burial with a marked grave is a luxury few can afford. He had no family here, but he was liked, Mary explains as you both dress for the day. The mission sometimes does this, buries those who'd otherwise go unclaimed, gives us a chance to say goodbye proper. The funeral is held in the small cemetery behind the mission church, a patch of ground that somehow remains consecrated despite the surrounding squalor. A dozen or so people gather. Dock workers who knew Paddy, women from the laundry, Reverend Pease in his clerical collar, and you and Mary. The service is brief but dignified. Paddy's plain pine coffin sits beside a freshly dug grave as Reverend Pease speaks words of comfort that sound almost believable even in 5 points. Paddy Mulligan was known to many of us as a friend, a hard worker, a man of good humor even in difficult times, the Reverend says. Though his life was not easy, he faced each day with courage and kindness. May he find in death the peace that often eluded him in life. The simple eulogy feels more genuine than flowery sentiments would have. 5 points doesn't allow for illusions about the hardships of life or the frequency of death. What it does allow for, sometimes, is recognition of the humanity that persists despite everything. After the service, a few of the dock workers approach Mary. We took up a collection, one says gruffly, handing her a small cloth bag that clinks with coins. For Paddy Stone. Ain't right for him to go without a marker. Mary's eyes fill with tears that for once she doesn't try to hide. He'd have done the same for any of you, she says simply. This is 5 points at its most revealing. A community cobbled together from desperation and necessity, yet capable of profound generosity from the little they have. The men who collected pennies for Paddy's gravestone will go without meals to make it happen, but they do it anyway. Some bonds transcend even the brutal mathematics of survival. As the small group disperses, Reverend Pease approaches you and Mary. The epidemic seems to be waning, he offers. Fewer new cases reported yesterday. Thank God for small mercies. Mary responds, genuine relief in her voice. Indeed. The Reverend hesitates. Mrs. O'Sullivan, the mission has a proposition for you. We've lost several of our regular laundry workers to the sickness. We could use someone experienced, someone who knows the neighborhood. Full-time work, room and board included. The offer clearly stuns Mary. Regular employment is rare enough in 5 points. Jobs that include housing are almost unheard of. For a single woman with no family, it's a lifeline thrown in a drowning sea. I don't know what to say, she stammers. Say yes. The Reverend smiles. You've earned it with your hard work. And frankly, we need help from those who understand 5 points from the inside, not just well-meaning outsiders like myself. Then yes, Mary decides, squeezing your hand in excitement. Yes, I accept. As you walk back from the cemetery, Mary seems transformed, not just by grief for Paddy, but by the unexpected opportunity. For perhaps the first time since you met her, she looks toward the future with something resembling hope. It's not much, she acknowledges. Laundry work is hard, and the mission folk can be stiff-necked about their rules. But a real bed every night, regular meals, maybe even put aside a few pennies for something better someday. In 5 points, such modest ambitions represent wild optimism. Most residents can't see beyond the next meal, the next night's lodging. Planning for someday is a luxury afforded to those with at least minimal security. What about you? She asks suddenly. Will you stay in the points? The question catches you off guard. In the intensity of experiencing 5 points, you've almost forgotten your status as a temporary visitor to this historical nightmare. Unlike Mary, you have an escape route back to your own time, your own comfortable life with its clean water and antibiotics and absence of cholera. I don't think I'll be here much longer, you answer truthfully. She nods, unsurprised. Not many stay who have a choice. Can't blame them. The afternoon slides toward evening, 5 Points gradually shifting from its daytime rhythms to the more dangerous nocturnal ones. With the epidemic receding, more people venture onto the streets, but there's still a weariness, an awareness that death has passed through and might return. One last night before I move to the mission, Mary says, let's get something decent to eat. Decent, in 5 Points, is relative, but Mary leads you to a small cellar restaurant run by an Italian family where the smell of garlic and tomatoes replaces the usual neighborhood stenches. For a few pennies, you get bowls of pasta with a thin but flavorful sauce. A feast by local standards. Never had Italian food before coming to the Points, Mary admits, twirling pasta awkwardly on her fork. In Ireland, it was potatoes every day until there weren't any left. Here, at least there's variety in what little we get. The small restaurant fills as evening deepens, mostly with Italian families speaking their native language. Children dart between tables while parents talk animatedly, hands waving for emphasis. Despite the poverty evident in their clothes and thin frames, there's genuine warmth and community here. That's how we survive the Points, Mary observes, watching a grandmother dote on a small child. Find your people. Make family where you can. Hold on to whatever came with you from the old country while learning to live in the new one. As you finish eating, the restaurant's mood shifts. Men come in from work, tired but relieved to be home. A bottle of homemade wine appears. Someone produces a battered accordion, and music fills the small space. Mournful Italian melodies that speak of homelands left behind and new lives built from nothing. We should go, Mary says reluctantly as full darkness falls outside. Not safe in the streets late. Night in 5 Points brings dangers absent during daylight. Certain alleys become impossible, controlled by gangs or criminals. Windows that showed warm light earlier now reveal shadowy figures moving inside brothels and gambling dens. The relatively innocent commerce of the day gives way to 5 Points' nocturnal economy, vice in all its varieties. Mary leads you quickly through streets that grow more threatening with each passing minute. Men linger in doorways, watching with predatory eyes. Women call from windows, offering companionship for a price. From a basement dive comes the sound of fighting, shouts, breaking glass, a cry of pain. Don't look, Mary advises as you pass a particularly dark alley where shapes move in the shadows. 5 Points at night isn't for the likes of us. The question of who it is for hangs unspoken. Those with nowhere else to go, those whose business thrives in darkness, those whose desperation drives them to risk the night streets for what little profit they offer. Almost there, Mary murmurs as you turn onto a slightly better lit street. Mrs. Chin's place is just ahead. A figure lurches from a doorway, a man clearly drunk, his face hidden in shadow. Well now, what's this? He slurs, blocking your path. 2 ladies out past decent hours. Mary stiffens beside you, her hand sliding into her pocket where you know she keeps a small knife. Step aside, mister. We're just heading home. Home? The man laughs, revealing missing teeth. Ain't no homes here, just holes where rats sleep. I said move. Mary repeats, her voice harder now. We don't want trouble. The tension stretches between you, Mary's determination against the man's drunken unpredictability. 5 Points at night, where wrong turns and bad luck can end in tragedy. Then from behind you. Everything all right, Mrs. O'Sullivan? The newcomer's voice is calm, but carries unmistakable authority. The drunk looks past you, sees something that makes him reconsider, and melts back into the shadows without another word. You turn to find a tall black man in simple but neat clothes, his expression friendly but watchful. Mr. Johnson, Mary sighs with relief. Thank you kindly. My pleasure, ma'am. He tips his hat. Heading to Mrs. Chen's? I'll walk with you the rest of the way. As you continue, Mary explains in a whisper, Isaiah Johnson, deacon at the Colored Church on Leonard Street. Good man. Looks out for folks around here when he can. Another 5 Points survival strategy. Unlikely alliances. Help appearing from unexpected quarters. The neighborhood's dangers create strange partnerships, mutual protection across lines that might otherwise divide. Mrs. Chin's boarding house appears ahead, its windows still lit, offering sanctuary from the increasingly menacing night. Mr. Johnson sees you safely to the door, tips his hat again, and continues on his own way into the darkness. 5 Points takes care of its own, Mary says as you climb the stairs to your room. Not always, not everyone, but enough to keep us going. The room feels even more luxurious after witnessing the dangers outside. Clean sheets, solid walls, a door that locks. Mary secures the bolt with practiced care, her body finally relaxing once the outside world is firmly shut away. Last night here, she muses, sitting on her bed. Tomorrow I go to the mission, and you, wherever you're going. I'll miss you, you say, surprised to find it's absolutely true. In this brief historical immersion, Mary has become more than a guide. She's become a friend, an anchor in the bewildering world of 5 Points. Ah, you'll be fine, she smiles, but her eyes betray similar attachment. 5 Points puts hair on your chest, as Patty would say. The mention of Patty brings a moment of shared sadness, but not the raw grief of earlier. In 5 Points, even mourning must be efficient, pragmatic. The living require too much attention to spend long on the dead. As night deepens outside, the sounds of 5 Points filter through the thin walls, distant shouts, occasional laughter, the clatter of wheels on cobblestones. But inside this small room, there's peace of a sort, a momentary reprieve from the neighborhood's relentless demands. You know what I think about sometimes? Mary says softly, staring at the ceiling. What it must be like in those big houses uptown. Clean water just by turning a tap. Rooms with only one family in them. Children who go to school instead of factories. The simple luxuries that define middle-class life in 1850s New York. Amenities that even the poorest in your time would take for granted. The gap between 5 Points and the comfortable world just a mile or two uptown might as well be an ocean. But then, she continues, those uptown folk, they don't know what we know. They don't understand how to survive when everything's against you. They've never felt what it's like when a stranger shares their last crust because you're both Irish or both Italian or both just hungry. They don't know 5 Points. There's pride in her voice alongside the resentment. Pride in endurance, in the hard-won knowledge of survival against impossible odds. 5 Points residents may envy the wealthy their comforts, but they also recognize their own strength, forged in conditions that would break those same privileged New Yorkers. Try to sleep, Mary suggests, blowing out the candle beside her bed. Tomorrow comes early, same as always. Darkness enfolds the room, deeper and more complete than you've experienced since arriving in 5 Points. No street lamps penetrate the small window. No neighbors' candles cast shadows on the walls. For once, you can almost forget where you are. Almost imagine yourself back in your own bed, in your own time. Outside, 5 Points continues its nocturnal existence. The gambling dens and brothels operating until dawn. The gangs claiming their territories until daylight drives them to cover. The most desperate seeking shelter in doorways and alleys until morning allows more dignified accommodations. But inside this small room with its clean sheets and solid door, sleep approaches like a merciful visitor. Your body, aching from unaccustomed labor, gradually relaxes. Your mind, overwhelmed by the constant sensory assault of 5 Points, begins to quiet. Mary's breathing deepens beside you, becoming the rhythmic pattern of sleep. Despite everything, the poverty, the disease, the constant struggle, she's found enough peace to rest. It's perhaps the most remarkable 5 Points survival skill of all, the ability to find moments of tranquility in a place designed to destroy it. As you drift towards sleep yourself, you reflect on what you've witnessed in this historical nightmare. The 5 Points slum was real. Its conditions were as horrific as any description could capture. People lived and died in circumstances that modern Americans would consider unsurvivable. They endured disease, starvation, violence, and exploitation that would break most spirits. And yet they survived. Not all of them, Patty didn't, and countless others succumbed to 5 Points' many hazards. but enough persisted to build communities, to create culture, to pass on their resilience to children who would eventually leave the slum for better circumstances. 5 Points was America at its worst, but also paradoxically America at its most determined. Immigrants and outcasts who refused to disappear despite every force aligned against them. Your own bed back home awaits your return. Clean, comfortable, free of bedbugs and cholera and the constant precarity of 1850s slum life. You'll never again turn a tap without remembering the 5 Points water pump. Never throw away food without thinking of those who scavenged for meals. Never take modern medicine for granted after seeing what cholera did to Patty. The lessons of 5 Points settle over you like a blanket. Not comfortable, but necessary. This was part of America's story, a chapter often glossed over in favor of more triumphant narratives. But understanding 5 Points means understanding something essential about the foundation upon which modern America was built, the exploitation, the suffering, but also the incredible human capacity for adaptation and persistence. Mary murmurs something in her sleep, a word, a name, perhaps a fragment of prayer. Even unconscious, she carries 5 Points with her, its rhythms and demands never fully absent. But for now, she rests, her body gathering strength for tomorrow's challenges. And you too find yourself sliding deeper toward sleep. The hardships of 5 Points gradually fading as consciousness recedes. Your breathing slows, matching Mary's restful rhythm. Your thoughts grow less distinct, more dreamlike. The weight of historical witness lifts, replaced by the lightness that comes before true sleep. In your time, 5 Points no longer exists. Demolished, rebuilt, reimagined as Chinatown, as courthouses, as modern apartment buildings with proper plumbing and ventilation. The people who suffered and survived there are long gone. Their stories mostly forgotten except by historians and descendants who may never know the full truth of what their ancestors endured. But for these few moments, you've walked their streets, breathed their air, witnessed their struggles and small victories. You've seen 5 Points not as a historical abstraction, but as a living community of people who, despite everything, maintain their humanity in conditions designed to strip it away. As sleep finally claims you, 5 Points recedes like an ebbing tide. Its lessons absorbed, but its hardships thankfully left behind. Unlike Mary, unlike Patty, unlike the thousands who had no choice but to wake tomorrow in America's most notorious slum, you can return to comfort, to safety, to the countless luxuries that would seem miraculous to 5 Points residents. Your last conscious thought is gratitude for modern medicine, for clean water, for regulations that prevent such slums from existing in America today. And perhaps also gratitude for this glimpse into a past that, however harsh, helped shape the present you'll return to. 5 Points fades completely now, replaced by the deep, healing peace of sleep. Your breathing slows, your body relaxes fully, and you drift into dreams far removed from tenements and cholera and struggling immigrants in a hostile new land. Morning comes as it eventually did even in 5 Points, offering temporary escape from hardship and renewal for tomorrow's challenges. But unlike those who slept in those crowded tenements, your sleep can be peaceful, secure in the knowledge that morning will bring comforts they could scarcely imagine. Rest now, and carry their memory gently into your dreams. Dawn breaks over 5 Points with an unexpected gift, silence. Not the complete absence of sound, but the kind of quiet that comes when a neighborhood holds its breath. The usual morning cacophony of shouting vendors, clattering carts, and screaming children is muted today. Even the ever-present background noise of coughing seems diminished. Mary sits up abruptly in her narrow bed, instantly alert like someone who's learned to sleep lightly in dangerous places. The epidemic's breaking, she murmurs, listening to the altered rhythms of the street below. Can you hear it? Less coughing, more people moving about normal-like. You strain your ears and realize she's right. The terrible symphony of sickness that's dominated 5 Points for days has quieted. The footsteps outside sound purposeful rather than fearful. A woman laughs somewhere, a sound you haven't heard in what feels like weeks. Mrs. Chin appears at your door with a breakfast tray, an unprecedented luxury. Epidemic over soon, she announces with quiet satisfaction. My husband's cousin works at health department. Says new cases down by half. The simple meal, tea, porridge, and an actual piece of fruit feels like a feast. Mary eats with careful deliberation, savoring each bite in a way that speaks of long experience with hunger. First decent food since this whole mess started, she says between mouthfuls. Mrs. Chin's feeling generous now the worst is past. As you finish eating, the morning sun finally penetrates the small window, casting warm rectangles of light across the floor. For the first time since you arrived in 5 Points, the light feels hopeful rather than just revealing the squalor. Today's the day then, Mary says, brushing crumbs from her dress. I report to the mission for my new position. And you? She trails off, studying you with those sharp eyes that miss nothing. You'll be going back, won't you? Back to wherever you really come from. There's no point denying it. Yes, I think today's the day. She nods, unsurprised. Knew you weren't from the Points. Knew it the moment I saw you. Too soft. Too clean. Too. She gestures vaguely. Too not broken. The words aren't unkind, just matter of fact. Mary's lived in 5 Points long enough to recognize someone who doesn't belong there. Will you be all right? You ask. At the mission, I mean. Mary actually smiles, a rare, unguarded expression that transforms her weary face. Me? I'll be grand. Regular meals. A proper bed. Work that won't give me consumption. It's more than most ever get here. She pauses, then adds quietly, I'll miss you though. Never had much chance to make friends in the Points. Too busy trying not to die. The simple admission catches at your heart. In this place where survival consumes every waking moment, friendship is a luxury few can afford. Mrs. Chun reappears to collect the breakfast dishes. You go now, she says to Mary with uncharacteristic gentleness. Mission waiting. I help your friend. Mary gathers her few possessions, the shawl from the mission, a small bundle of spare clothes, the knife she keeps hidden in her skirts. At the door, she hesitates, then turns back abruptly and pulls you into a fierce hug. Don't forget us, she whispers fiercely in your ear. Don't forget what you saw here. Then she's gone, her footsteps echoing down the stairs, leaving you alone with Mrs. Chun in the suddenly too quiet room. The old woman studies you with those impossibly dark eyes. You special one, she says at last. Not belong here. Time go home now. She leads you to a small washroom at the end of the hall, another unheard of luxury in 5 Points. A tin tub sits filled with steaming water. Clean clothes are folded neatly on a stool nearby. Bath first, Mrs. Chun instructs. Then food. Then you go. The hot water feels like heaven against your grime-caked skin. Weeks of 5 Points filth slew away, turning the water gray almost immediately. Mrs. Chun returns with a scrub brush and harsh lye soap, working at your nails and hair with surprising gentleness for such gnarled hands. Many years I do this, she says as she scrubs. Help girls from bad places. Some go to mission. Some find husbands. Some. She makes a gesture like a bird flying away. Some disappear like morning mist. When you're finally clean, perhaps the cleanest you've been since arriving in this nightmare, Mrs. Chun helps you into the fresh clothes. They're simple but well made, the fabric sturdy and unpatched. Not fine enough to attract thieves, but nice enough that you won't stand out as a complete beggar. Back in your room, another surprise awaits. A proper meal laid out on the small table. Roast chicken, potatoes, fresh bread with butter. Food that would cost a week's wages for most 5 Points residents. Eat, Mrs. Chun commands. Long journey needs strength. As you eat, she packs a small bundle for you. More food wrapped in cloth, a flask of what smells like tea, a few coins sewn into a hidden pocket. For safety, she explains. World dangerous, even outside Points. When the meal is finished, Mrs. Chun leads you downstairs to the boarding house's front parlor, a room you've never seen before, kept pristine behind locked doors. The furniture is polished, the floors clean, the air smelling of beeswax and lavender instead of sewage and despair. A well-dressed man rises from one of the chairs as you enter. His clothes mark him as upper class, though not extravagantly so. A merchant perhaps, or a professional man. His face is kind but weary, the face of someone who's seen too much but hasn't let it harden him completely. "Ah, there you are," he says, his voice warm. "I was beginning to think Mrs. Chun had changed her mind about letting you go." Mrs. Chun snorts. "No change mind. Just make ready." She gives you a little push forward. "This Mr. Aldridge. Good man. Help many girls. He take you where you belong." Mr. Aldridge studies you with quiet intensity. "You're not like the others, are you?" He murmurs, more to himself than to you. "There's something different about you." Mrs. Chun makes a sharp gesture. "No questions. You promise?" Of course, of course." Mr. Aldridge nods agreeably. "No questions. Just safe passage to wherever our friend here needs to go." He offers you his arm. "Shall we?" The carriage is waiting. At the door, Mrs. Chin stops you one last time. Her gnarled hands press something into yours, a small carved charm of dark wood. "For luck," she says. Then, even quieter, "You remember. Remember 5 points. Remember us." Then you're out on the street, blinking in the sunlight. Mr. Aldridge's hands steady under your elbow as he guides you to a waiting carriage. The last thing you see as the carriage pulls away is Mrs. Chun standing in her doorway, watching you go with those dark, knowing eyes. The carriage is a marvel of smooth leather seats and polished wood, the kind of vehicle you'd only ever seen from a distance in 5 points. The horses are sleek and well-fed, their coats gleaming. The contrast with the broken-down carts and emaciated nags of the slums is almost painful. Mr. Aldridge settles opposite you as the carriage begins to move. "I won't ask where you're from," he says quietly. Mrs. Chun was quite clear about that. "But I will say this, whatever brought you to 5 points, I'm glad you survived it. Not many do, you know." Not really. The carriage rolls through streets that grow progressively cleaner, the buildings taller and more ornate. You catch glimpses of Washington Square Park through the window, green grass, flowering trees, well-dressed children playing under the watchful eyes of nannies. It might as well be another planet. "Here," Mr. Aldridge says at length, handing you a small envelope. "From Mrs. Chun. She said to give it to you when we were well away from the points." Inside is a single sheet of paper with a few lines of careful script, the handwriting of someone who learned late in life and still forms each letter with deliberate care. You carry 5 points with you now, not in your clothes or your skin, but here. A crude drawing of a heart follows. This is both curse and gift. The seeing is hard, but worse is to be blind. Go with God, and do not forget. The note isn't signed. None of Mrs. Chin's girls would ever betray her that way. The carriage continues uptown, the neighborhood's growing ever more affluent. At length, Mr. Aldridge leans forward. "Nearly there," he says. "Is this?" He gestures vaguely ahead, and somehow, you realize he doesn't know your destination any more than you do. He's simply trusting that at some point, you'll indicate where you need to be. You peer out the window as the carriage turns a corner, and there it is. A small park you recognize from your own time, though the surrounding buildings are all wrong. But the shape of the land, the curve of the path, those are unchanged across the centuries. "Here," you say suddenly. "This is the place." Mr. Aldridge doesn't question it. He simply signals the driver to stop and helps you down from the carriage. The park is quiet at this hour, just a few nursemaids with their charges and the occasional businessman taking a shortcut. "I don't know what happens now," Mr. Aldridge confesses, looking around the peaceful scene. "Mrs. Chun said you'd know what to do when the time came. You do know. There's a particular bench near a particular tree, one that will still be standing in your own time. You can feel the rightness of it in your bones. Thank you," you say, meaning it with all your heart. "For everything." Mr. Aldridge smiles, that same weary but kind expression. "It was my pleasure. Truly." He hesitates, then adds, "If you ever, that is, if you find yourself in need of help again, you can always contact me through Mrs. Chun. No questions asked." With that, he tips his hat and climbs back into the carriage. You watch until it turns the corner and disappears from view, leaving you alone in the park. The bench is exactly where you knew it would be. You sit, letting the spring sunshine warm your face, listening to the bird song that would have been drowned out by the noise of 5 points. The contrast is almost painful in its intensity. You close your eyes, Thinking of Mary starting her new life at the mission, of Mrs. Chin's boarding house full of girls with nowhere else to go, of Patty in his grave, and all the others who didn't survive 5 points long enough to see this day. The sunlight through your eyelids turns suddenly brighter, warmer. The birdsong grows louder, then changes subtly. The calls of different birds, the hum of distant traffic that sounds nothing like horse-drawn carriages. When you open your eyes, the park is both the same and completely different. The trees are older, the paths paved with modern asphalt. The buildings surrounding the park are glass and steel instead of brick and stone. And the people wear jeans and t-shirts, carry smartphones, sip from takeaway coffee cups. You're home, but something has changed. The air smells different, not just cleaner than 5 points, but somehow more alive with possibilities. Colors seem brighter, sounds richer. The woman walking her dog across the park is a story waiting to be told. The old man feeding pigeons a novel unto himself. Mrs. Chun was right. You carry 5 points with you now, in the way you see the world, in the way you'll never again take clean water or medical care or a safe place to sleep for granted. The seeing is hard, but worse is to be blind. Your hand slips into your pocket and finds the wooden charm still there. A tangible piece of that other time, that other place. A reminder that history isn't just dates and names, but real people who lived and loved and struggled just as fiercely as anyone alive today. As you stand to leave the park, a snippet of conversation catches your ear. 2 young women walking past, one complaining about her tiny apartment, the other about her terrible job. First world problems, they'd call them in your time. You smile to yourself, knowing what you know, having seen what you've seen. The sunlight feels warm on your face, the breeze fresh against your skin. Somewhere, in some wind, Mary is starting her first day of honest work at the mission. Somewhere, Mrs. Chun is taking in another lost girl. Somewhere, 5 points endures, not the physical place, which is long gone, but the memory of it, the lessons it taught, the strength it forged in those who survived. You carry all of that with you now. And as you walk away from the bench, toward the familiar streets of your own time, you realize that in some strange way, you'll always be walking out of 5 points, carrying its stories with you into whatever comes next. The seeing is hard, but you wouldn't choose to be blind. The familiar hum of modern New York envelopes you as you step out of the park. The growl of car engines, the distant wail of sirens, the murmur of hundreds of simultaneous conversations bleeding together into white noise. After the cacophony of 5 points, this should feel overwhelming, but instead it wraps around you like a comfortable blanket. Your phone buzzes in your pocket. A text from a friend. Where you been? Missed you at brunch. The mundane message nearly makes you laugh aloud. How could you possibly explain where you've been? Who would believe it? The wooden charm in your pocket presses against your thigh as you walk, a tangible reminder that it wasn't a dream. You find yourself studying the faces of passers-by with new eyes, the harried businessman, the frazzled mother with twin toddlers, the elderly man feeding pigeons. Each carries invisible histories you can now imagine in vivid detail. At a crosswalk, a street musician plays an Irish folk song on a battered fiddle. The melody transports you instantly back to Paradise Square, to the blending of African rhythms and Irish reels that birthed tap dancing in those filthy, glorious streets. You drop a 20 in his case, far more than the performance warrants. The musician's eyes widen. "Bless you," he says. "You just paid my rent for the week." The simple exchange lodges in your throat. In 5 points, that 20 could have meant survival for a month. Here, it's a generous tip. The inequality of it burns. Your apartment feels alien when you finally reach it. Too clean, too quiet, too spacious. The refrigerator hums reassuringly, stocked with food that would have seemed unimaginable luxury in 5 points. You take a long shower, watching the dirt swirl down the drain, wondering whose hands pumped that water in your absence. That night, sleep refuses to come. Every time you close your eyes, you see Mary's face as she left for the mission, Mrs. Chin's knowing gaze, Patty's hollow cheeks in his hospital bed. The comfortable mattress feels wrong after weeks of straw and floorboards. At 3 a.m., you give up and turn on your computer. The glow of the screen illuminates research rabbit holes about 5 points. Historical records, census data, newspaper archives. You find Reverend Pease's name in an 1856 mission report. There's a Mary O'Sullivan listed in the 1860 census as a laundress at the 5 Points mission. A death record for Patty Mulligan, cholera listed as cause, buried in the mission cemetery. Real people, not characters in a story, but flesh and blood humans who lived and suffered and survived as best they could. The realization sits heavy in your chest. Morning comes at last, the sunlight revealing your apartment in harsh detail. Everything looks different now. The framed prints on the walls seem frivolous, the throw pillows absurdly decorative. You catch yourself calculating how many 5 Points families could live in your one-bedroom space. Work emails pile up in your inbox, all suddenly trivial compared to the life and death struggles you've witnessed. A meeting request about quarterly projections. A reminder about someone's birthday in the break room. The mundane concerns of modern life feel surreal after weeks in the 19th century. You call in sick, something you've never done without actual illness. Then you head to the library, drawn by some unnamable need to understand more. The research librarian helps you locate crumbling volumes of 19th century public health records. Page after page documents the horrors you witnessed firsthand. Overflowing privies, contaminated water supplies, children working in factories at ages that would be unthinkable today. The statistics blur together until one entry jumps out at you. Mulberry Bend, July 1853. 37 souls lost to cholera in a single week. Mostly Irish immigrants. Mostly children. Your hands shake as you turn the brittle pages. Here are the names of people you walked beside, the conditions you endured given clinical documentation. The academic language can't mask the suffering behind the words. A photograph tucked between pages stops you cold. A group of ragpickers posing solemnly outside their tenement. A woman at the edge of the frame could be Mary, though the grainy image makes it hard to tell. The haunted eyes are the same. Find what you're looking for? The librarian asks as you reshelve the books hours later. You almost laugh. How could you explain that you found proof you traveled through time? That the nightmare you lived is documented history? Instead, you just nod and thank her. The summer air feels different when you step outside. Heavier, more meaningful somehow. You walk without destination, seeing the modern city layered over the 5 Points landscape you came to know so well. Here was Bandit's Roost, now a courthouse. There stood the old brewery, replaced by a playground. Paradise Square buried beneath municipal buildings. At a small Italian cafe, you order espresso and cannoli, thinking of the basement restaurant where Mary tasted pasta for the first time. The first bite transports you back to her wonder at flavors beyond potatoes and gruel. Your phone buzzes again. More messages from friends wondering where you've been. You type and delete responses half a dozen times before settling on. Had some family stuff to take care of. Tell you about it later. What could you possibly say? That you time traveled to America's worst slum? That you made friends with people dead for 150 years? That you'll never look at running water the same way again? The barista refills your cup without being asked. You okay? She asks. You look like you've seen a ghost. Something like that, you admit. She nods sympathetically. Family stuff sucks. My nana died last year, and I still see her everywhere. You murmur condolences, struck by how easily she assumed your pain was from a recent loss. In a way, it is. You're grieving people long dead, mourning a place that no longer exists except in history books. The days blur together as you adjust to being back. Work resumes, though your focus is shot. Friends eventually stop asking about your unexplained absence. Life, as it always does, moves on. But you don't. Can't. Small things trigger memories. The smell of bread baking, Maggie's half-moldy loaves, the sound of children laughing, the ones who didn't survive the cholera outbreak, the feel of clean sheets, so unlike the lice-infested straw of 5 Points. You start volunteering at a homeless shelter, then a food bank. It's not enough, could never be enough, but it's something. The modern poor face different struggles than Mary and Patty did, but the desperation in their eyes is hauntingly familiar. One rainy afternoon, You find yourself standing outside the tenement museum on the Lower East Side. The exhibits recreate immigrant life in the 19th century, tiny apartments restored to their original condition, stories of families who lived there carefully documented. The tour group moves from room to reconstructed room as the guide explains how 8 people might share a 325 square foot apartment. You already know. You've lived it. When the guide mentions the cholera epidemic of 1853, your breath catches. She describes the symptoms clinically: the violent diarrhea, the dehydration, the blue-tinged skin. You remember the sounds of it, the smell, the way Patty's hands shook as he reached for Mary's flask. "Are you all right?" The woman next to you asks, noticing your reaction. You nod, unable to explain that you're remembering a friend's death 170 years ago. The tour continues, but you slip away, needing air. Back in your apartment that night, you take out Mrs. Chin's wooden charm, turning it over in your hands. The carving is simple but precise. 2 interlocking circles that might represent the moon or perhaps the cyclical nature of history. You wonder if she made it herself, if she gave similar charms to other girls who passed through her boarding house. A sudden impulse sends you back to your computer. You search for records of Chinese boarding houses in 1850s New York, finding only passing mentions in census documents. No trace of Mrs. Chun, though you didn't really expect to find any. Women like her, immigrant, poor, operating in the margins, rarely made it into official histories. But she existed. They all existed. You print out the photo of the rag pickers and frame it beside your bed, not as decoration, but as a reminder of where you've been, what you've seen, who you owe. Because that's the truth that's become undeniable. You owe them. Not in any mystical debt to the past way, but in the concrete understanding that your comfortable modern life was built on the suffering of people like Mary and Patty and Mrs. Chun. The running water you drink, the labor laws that protect you, the medical care you take for granted, these didn't appear by magic. They were won through generations of struggle. The realization changes everything. You start small, donating to organizations fighting modern slums, volunteering more regularly, even just noticing the invisible workers who keep the city running. It's not enough, but it's a start. At a used bookstore, you discover a first edition of Jacob Riis's How the Other Half Lives, his groundbreaking 1890 expose of tenement life. The photographs are hauntingly familiar. The overcrowded rooms, the children working in factories, the alleys you walked in 5 Points. Riis writes, "The half that is on top cares little for the struggles of the half that is underneath. But that is the half that may rise to challenge the existing order one day." You think of Mary's resilience, Patty's humor in the face of death, Mrs. Chin's quiet resistance. They didn't have the power to challenge the existing order, but they survived it. And in surviving, they paved the way for change. Summer fades into fall. The sharp edges of your memories soften slightly, though they never disappear. You dream of 5 Points less often, though certain smells or sounds will still transport you back instantly. One crisp October morning, you return to the park where you first reappeared in the modern era. The same bench sits beneath the same tree, though the leaves are just beginning to turn. You sit and take out Mrs. Chin's charm, running your fingers over its smooth surface. A pigeon lands nearby, eyeing you hopefully. You scatter crumbs from your breakfast muffin, thinking of the Italian boy who showed you where to find day-old bread. Crazy pigeon lady already? That was fast. You turn to see your friend Sarah approaching, 2 steaming coffee cups in hand. Of all your friends, she's been the most persistent in checking on you since your family stuff. "Thought I might find you here," she says, handing you a cup. "You've been coming a lot lately." You sip the coffee, perfectly sweetened, just how you like it. "How'd you know?" Sarah shrugs. You get this look sometimes, like you're remembering something painful but important. And then you usually end up here. She pauses. You still don't want to talk about it. How could you possibly explain? But as you study Sarah's open, concerned face, you realize you have to try. It's going to sound insane, you warn. Sarah grins. "Try me. I binge-watched all of Doctor Who last month. I'm primed for insane." So you tell her. Not everything. Not the visceral memories of filth and disease and hunger, but the essence of it. that you somehow ended up in 1850s 5 Points, that you lived there for weeks, that the people you met changed you forever. To her credit, Sarah doesn't laugh or call you delusional. She listens intently, asking surprisingly insightful questions about daily life in the slums. When you finish, she's quiet for a long moment. "Okay," she says at last. "Time travel aside, and we'll circle back to that. What matters is you had this experience that showed you how much suffering went into building the world we take for granted." She squeezes your hand. "That's not crazy. That's just good history." The relief is overwhelming. Someone knows. Someone understands, at least partly. Sarah insists on seeing the historical records you found, the photograph of the ragpickers. She marvels at Mrs. Chen's charm, turning it over in her hands with reverence. "This is incredible," she breathes. "The craftsmanship, it looks ancient." "It's not," you say softly. "Just from a time when things were made to last." Sarah becomes your unexpected ally. She helps you find more records, even convinces you to speak at a local historical society about what you learned. The members politely ignore your claims of time travel, focusing instead on your vivid descriptions of daily life that match their research. Winter comes, then spring. Life moves forward, as it always does. But you're different now. You can't walk past a construction worker without wondering about workplace safety laws written in blood. You can't pour a glass of water without remembering the single pump for hundreds of people. You can't hear a child laugh without thinking of the ones who never survived to adulthood. The seeing is hard, but you wouldn't choose to be blind. On the anniversary of your return, you go back to the park bench one last time. Mrs. Chen's charm rests in your palm, warmed by the spring sunshine. You think about leaving it there, returning it to the past in some symbolic gesture. But instead you slip it back into your pocket. Some things are worth carrying with you. As you walk away, a street musician sets up near the bench, a fiddler playing an Irish reel that would have been at home in Paradise Square. The notes follow you down the path, a reminder that the past is never truly gone. It lives on in the laws we pass, the rights we defend, the memories we keep alive, and in those of us who remember.